All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is another little cast of mine. My name is Chris, and this is Barn on 11970. Hope you guys and gals out there have had a great weekend and are continuing to do so. It's a little chilly out, but still a nice day overall. And this is one of my live shows where I just decide I have a thought, I want to share it while I have it in my mind, and we'll see if it resonates with you or not. So welcome, whether you're watching this live or you are watching it days, weeks, months later. And as you can see by the title of this video, it talks about the fact of never ignore evil or corruption. Now, I wanted to give a little report that I made a video a couple of days ago about what was happening with WikiLeaks and Julia Assange, how literally they were having people going up the stairs of the Ecuadorian embassy where he's staying to literally kidnap him or even murder. Who knows their intent. But the reason nothing happened and he is alive and well, which I'm glad to see, is a good thing because, no person should be murdered, whether they're good, bad, or evil. It's not for us to decide. So I'll say that about anybody, whatever their intents are. I mean, people should get punished, but who are we to point the fingers on how that should get done? But one of the reasons, and he even said it himself, that the fact that he's still there, he's still alive, is the fact that people cared. And he said at the late night hours, people were making videos exposing what was going on. And it could have potentially helped save his life. So that is one of the places where people need to realize out there that you have more power than maybe even you will give yourself credit. And when we ignore things, we allow things to happen. And I try and explain this all the time. And hopefully videos like this will help motivate people out there that are kind of on the fence, where they're tired of the corruption, but they still have that fear of the consequences for their actions. And as you could see, somebody like myself, who is every single video is pretty much saying the governments throughout the world are corrupt. I mean, I've explained videos where it goes as high as the Vatican, the high as the corporations and beyond, and I'm still here to tell it. And there are many people that are still here to tell it, and they want you to think that being afraid, they can silence you, and that's how they got away with these things all these years. And that's why, for example, and I take a lot of pride in this, when I started my other channel, it was Barn on 11967. And I started understanding what was going on. Now, I was new to it then, so you're going to go in different directions, because back in the beginning when I was first starting to awaken, quote-unquote, I was listening to people like Alex Jones, because he's the starter kit to the truther movement. So it gets you a lot of paranoia. You start researching different things, but I like the fact that you have to have a starting point, and the more you research, the more you kind of hone in your skills. It's like playing piano. The first time you play, you're going to have no idea what's going on. After a while, you'll play a little note here and there. Next thing you know, after a couple of years, you could become an expert. But there's going to be that cringe-worthy time where you're still learning and honing your craft. And I was warning people years ago, the corruption in government, how people were paid to even troll YouTube channels, and I was laughed at, I was ignored, had tons of people unsubscribing, saying I was some paranoid crazy person, and it ends up it's all true. And you could see if you watch the speech that Trump did at Gettysburg. I mean, just the fact that they are speaking about this stuff should awaken even the hardest of sleepers. So I have said on numerous occasions, I don't trust any of these political parties to do the right thing. But what I do appreciate is someone at least saying what needs to be said, because you could never make your first step if you don't know you could walk. So if you can take things from this, depends on what you decide to do. And the mainstream media, the corrupt politicians, the corporations, they are counting on you to be afraid to speak out, because then we allow it to continue. And that's why over the years, despite the abuse, despite channels that still to this day troll me and attack me and insult my credibility, I continue to press forward, because the truth matters to me. at least to the best of my ability to get truth. That doesn't mean every single second of every single video that I've said is 100% totally accurate. I cannot control what is not part of something that I've participated in. We can only base it on the information provided. And as we could see, especially in this U.S. corporation, because every country is a corporation, so we got to stop pointing fingers. But in this government, they have done everything in their power to show you that it's us against them. It's the whole typical divide and conquer. But they're very good at dividing us so we fight amongst ourselves. And that's why you see probably one of the biggest divisions I've ever seen between Republicans and Democrats and even independents. And people are unfriending each other. They're losing their family members over this. I mean, this is the ultimate of divide and conquer. And my thing is, I mean, like, I'll give you a prime example. I've had people over the years tell me, oh, you got to ignore the trolls. You got to ignore the haters. And my thing is, and I've said this in several videos, if you ignore one part of what's being presented to you, then you're missing out on things that could potentially put you on a path you need to be in. And sometimes evil, if you take something from it and you learn from it, can sometimes even just teach you how not to be or what not to do. So if you ignore that, you're taking away half of life's learning lessons. And I think people are so afraid to confront others. My thing is, you don't have to sit there and pull out a gun and have the other person pull out a gun and you have an open battle. But you can listen to what people are saying and then take from it what you will. And that's why I even say, one of the reasons why I don't listen to Alex Jones and others like him is that they do a lot of fear porn. But I did take away some good things from it. So you can take away good things out of any situation. So what I want to recommend to people out there, especially those who care, the ones that don't care and they're just listening because they're bored or they want to see if I'm going to say something stupid or whatever and they get joy out of that, I can't help them. But if you can see something and say, okay, yes, it's bad, or yes, that person's bad, or what they're saying is bad, or what they're doing I don't agree with, you could learn from that experience on what not to do, or how to do it better, how to reword things. I mean, sitting there calling people idiots is not the best motivator for somebody to want to engage you in a dialogue. And sometimes we have to learn. Like, and I've had so many people say, and one of the biggest things I find is on my channel, if you see about my channel, it's not about one specific thing. I've talked about things that motivate people. I've talked about government conspiracies. I've talked about government law. I've talked about your emotions, things like that. I'm all over because I base things on what I feel is resonating with me at that moment, what I feel strongly enough to share. And no matter what I do and no matter what I say, there will always be people that say I'm doing the wrong thing or I have to go back to one section. Like if I talk about gold and silver, I'll have part of my subscribers say, oh, I like when you talk about the motivational stuff. And when I talk about the motivational stuff, I'll have people say, oh, well, I love when you talk about the gold and silver. So, like they say, you could please some of the people all the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. What I base things on is my feelings on what I feel is best at that moment. Because if I have something that I can share and it helps somebody, even if it's one person, who knows what that one person can do? And as like I opened this video up by saying that even Julian Assange has said in his last speech a day or two ago that thanks to people that made videos alerting to the situation, he's still in the Ecuadorian embassy, still there. He wasn't taken away. He wasn't murdered. And he contributes that to people who made videos. Now, obviously, I made a video, but it only had, a couple of hundred subscriber views, so I seriously doubt mine had any impact at all. But there were ones that had hundreds of thousands of views. But it proves a point that when you do nothing and you ignore a certain aspect because, oh, I don't want to rock that boat, well, then you take away part of an equation that could teach you things. And like learning an instrument, in the beginning, you're going to not know what's going on. It's going to be intimidating. And just imagine if you had a group of kids that were learning to play the violin and they were maybe a year into it, and they were up against the Boston Symphony Orchestra. How embarrassed would those kids be if they tried to play what the Boston Symphony Orchestra was playing? The only difference is the level of skill, because the people that are in the Boston Symphony Orchestra at one point were those kids. So you have to go through the learning lessons. You have to, when you play guitar, you have to get those calluses on your finger, which means you have to hurt your fingers to the point they blister enough to where it hardens. So you have to go through pain sometimes to be able to move forward. And people are so afraid to be judged, so afraid to be hurt, so afraid to be insulted, that they'll never get to that step, and they'll ignore the things that are going on for fear that it will change their lives. And of course it will, but people always naturally assume the worst. If we continue to allow governments throughout the world to continually control us, and we continually allow them to make us dependent on their every decision, is it any wonder why things are getting worse and worse? I mean, I'll give you an example. Look at our deficit just in this country since Obama took office. When Obama started in 2008, he had a deficit roughly around $10 trillion. Now, we're, of course, averaging it out because I don't want to get into the specific numbers because it doesn't matter. It's around $10 trillion. As he is exiting office, he will have left the deficit $20 trillion. Now, that means they borrowed that currency. Well, where has it gone? Is this country in a better position? It's doubled its debt, and yet bridges and roads are still old and out of date. Our railway systems are a joke compared to other places in the world. I mean, if you look at the airports, how bad they are. Our school systems are so depleted, we're on the bottom of the world in education. So where did all this money go that they supposedly borrowed? And the worst part is, they borrowed it, we're paying it back. So what did we get for our investment? Because that's technically what it is if you want to think of it that way. Because how many times have people told you, oh, your taxes go towards bridges and roads? Well, if that's the case, why do we have such a subpar transportation system? I mean, if you look at the trains in China and over in Europe and compare them to ours, it's a joke. I'm surprised we don't have still the engines that you had to throw coal in. So where did all that money go? And people don't think about that because they're afraid to say things. And more people are standing up. And you notice how things are getting out there? It's because people are losing their fear. And I've said this so many times that fear is a choice. So if you are listening to this and you care, you have to do your part. And that is not giving up, not refusing to say anything out of fear of being judged or ridiculed or attacked. Like I said, when I first started my channel, and there are plenty of people that still watch me that have watched me since my other channel, Barn on 11967, where I was made fun of constantly. There are still video channels that make fun of me and still have videos still up from those days. They don't have much new material anymore because they're starting to realize that a lot of things that they thought were crazy back then have come up to be true. Or at least not false. So I wasn't afraid of the judgment. And yes, I lost lots of friends. I lost lots of family members. People like, oh, I don't want to hear from that person. He's trying to bring me down. What good is having the best party of your life if it's on a sinking ship and you're going to die? Wouldn't you rather stop that amazing party, get off that ship so you have the rest of your life to have many other parties? But people are so worried about the moment that they're in that they, number one, don't learn from the past, and they don't think about the future. And if they do, it's what, a couple of days ahead? A week or two? When people plan things, they plan a week or two in advance, at most a year. Governments plan 50 years in advance. If we continue to be afraid to speak out, if we continue to depend on others, we are going to get what we deserve. Why do you think people are talking about potential World War III at this time? Do you really think any of us want that to happen? And I still, to this day, do not believe things like that are going to happen. But that doesn't mean it's not a possibility. In an infinite universe, there are infinite possibilities. So anything, of course, could be a possibility. The thing you have to say to yourself is, do you want to turn it into your reality? And I've used the example before. If you're on a train track and you're having the best time of your life, let's say you meet the guy or girl of your dreams on that train track, and they say you have to have sex with them right there, and that's it. You can't move. Well, if you stay on that track long enough, eventually a train is going to come hit you. And of course, being hit by a train is bad. It's going to ruin their moment. It's not going to be something fun. But you can always get off the tracks and go somewhere else. So you live another day. But if you want to sit there and say, oh, well, it's inevitable, the train's coming down the track, and it is, that doesn't mean you have to stay there. It's all choice. And the news media, if you put it into that scenario, think of it as in the news media being somebody saying, oh, there's no train coming. This track has been dead. There's no train. Oh, and that train in the distance? Oh, don't worry, it'll stop. Or you're just imagining it. It's an optical illusion. It's really on another track. This is what happens when people choose to do nothing. And a lot of times people choose to do nothing not only based on fear, they get paid to do evil or to ignore. And I used to say that all the time, that some of these trolls, they were getting paid by the government. I got laughed at hysterically how stupid that was and how crazy that was. And now you see videotapes proving that the DNC, and I'm sure they're not the only ones that have done it, so let's keep it real. I'm sure Republicans on their side have done it throughout their history, because it's never going to be one-sided in a total corrupt government. So I'm going to keep it real with that. But the video is showing that they were paying homeless people and other people to start riots to the point where even if they got hospitalized or imprisoned, they would be compensated for it. And now the media is trying to say, oh, well, they're focusing on the person and saying, oh, well, that person is a potential criminal and he's taken things out of content, so we can't take the videos at face value. Well, that's just the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. Let's give an example. Let's say a known rapist is walking along and has a camera, and he sees a cop pulling over an old woman, and then all of a sudden records the cop saying, I'm going to shoot you in the head if you don't give me your money. Basically, the cop is robbing the old lady, and the cop doesn't know that that person is filming it. So this rapist happens to record a dishonest cop basically extorting an old woman, threatening violence, if not murder. And he puts that film or video out on the internet. Does it matter that the person's a rapist? You see how they use the diversion technique? And they're trying to focus on, don't worry about the message, worry about the messenger. And you notice they did the same thing with Hillary Clinton's emails. They're trying to blame it on Russia. They're trying to say how they're trying to rig the election, which is so hypocritical considering how much of Hollywood is being paid to say how much you have to vote for Hillary Clinton. Google what Michael Moore said recently, that if you vote for Donald Trump, you're basically a terrorist. Also, the whole white privilege, which I would love to have some of that. I'm not exactly living the life of luxury where I'm just laying around having somebody feed me grapes, living the wonderful lifestyle. If there's white privilege, and I'm probably as white as they come, because, any whiter would be clear. I'm Irish, English, and Italian. I would love to have some of this supposed white privilege. I don't see it. But there are plenty of people that want to talk about it. Yeah, somebody like Michael Moore might have some white privilege, or maybe he just has privilege because he's a Hollywood, insider, and he has plenty of money. It's a lot easier to have privilege when you have tons of money. And it's very easy to say that when that's all you're surrounded by is other privileged people. And I mean, look at the other night when Trump and Hillary, they did that roast in front of all those extremely wealthy people. Notice how at first they were both laughing and having such a great time? If we continue to ignore these things, we're going to get exactly what we deserve. And I'm trying so hard to keep that from happening, at least from my perspective. And people sometimes just choose to ignore certain aspects because they might like somebody. or like a political party. There are no saints here, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody can be held accountable at some point. It's their intention. So look at the news media when they finally talked about the Project Veritas videos. And I did a video showing a little clip from it the other day, which, by the way, when I show clips from these smaller channels, not once has any of them ever tried to flag my video because they're there to try and spread truth. But if you do something from a major corporate video, if you show 1 second of a Disney film these days, they will flag it 2 seconds after you did it. When I did the first presidential debate, I actually did a live one. I even unmonetized it. So this way, I wasn't doing it to get any ad revenue. I shut off the ad revenue for that video so my subscribers can see the live show, because I got a lot of people overseas that watch me. And they flag that. So it shows the corruption. So it should really aggravate you when these news channels, and especially CNN, but it's all of them. And I would have never thought I'd see the light of day where I'd say Fox News has been the most honest. But then again, that's like saying, they've murdered the least amount of people. That still makes you a murderer, and they're still corrupt. But how they can take information and even have video evidence and focus on the person who filmed that moment. So like I said, if a rapist filmed a corrupt cop doing a threatening and giving a shakedown and extorting an old woman, should we dismiss what is being filmed based on who the person is? And you notice in politics especially, they always go after people's credibility. So let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say all of those girls that accused Donald Trump of doing those things, let's just say hypothetically they were all 100% true. What does that have to do with his politics? Now, it would go towards his integrity, but does that mean he can't pass a law because of what he did, supposedly, allegedly? I mean, think about, for example, our medical system. Do you know how many millions of people throughout history were illegally operated on? What about with the internment camps? Now, whether you agree they existed or not, I'm not even going to get into that. That's your own belief. I wasn't there, so I don't know. It could be a false thing. It could be a truthful thing. Because I wasn't there, I can't say other than what I hear. But let's just assume that the Nazi internment camps were true. And they were operating on thousands of Jewish people. They learned a lot of medical things. And even you go further back to the Dark Ages, where they would torture people, and they would cut them open alive so they could see their heartbeats. There are many medical life-saving things that we now have based on corrupt people. So does that mean we shouldn't use them? So if your mother or your sister or your brother or your friend or your dog or whatever is dying and a medical treatment can help them, would you turn it down because of how that medical term got there? And when people think of things in those perspectives, they start to understand. Now, I'm not saying evil is good, but if you can have good things that can come from something, well, then you've learned. And that's why you can't ignore anything. Sometimes you could learn more about life from your enemies than you can your friends. Because let me tell you something, if you go to your mother or father, provided they're still alive or they still talk to you or whatever, and if you're wearing the most ridiculous outfit, and you go to your mother or father and say, how do I look? You know what? They're not going to tell you exactly how you should be told. They're going to sugarcoat it. You know how many times, like when I remember when I was a kid, if I got a new haircut or I cut my own hair or something, I go to my mother, hey, Ma, how does this look? And before she even turns around to look, as she's turning around, she says, oh, I love it. It looks great. Somebody that hates me will probably tell me exactly what I need to hear. So you can't ignore things. Oh, I've gotten more motivation from the evil, corrupt people than for the people that have been on my side. And I'll give you an example of things. Like, for example, when I first started becoming a massage therapist, I was always asking people what I was needing improvement on and what I was doing right. Now, when I was doing something right, I didn't have to change anything because they said, oh, the amount of pressure that you use is perfect. Keep that up. Well, I don't have to improve it if they say it's perfect. But if somebody was saying, well, you know what, you put too much oil, then I learned from that. Or they say, let's say, for example, the pressure. Oh, well, when you press on my neck, it's just too much near the Adam's apple, and it hurt me. I don't take it as an insult. I take it as, okay, now I learned what not to do. So I don't ignore the negativity that so many say you should just ignore. Because you can learn and better yourself. And I'll give you a prime example. I took about a year, almost 2 years off this channel when I started my We Love Comics channel. I got so frustrated with the hatred, so frustrated with the insults, and I wasn't really reaching people, that I literally was going to abandon this channel and start a comic book thing, reinvigorate something I did as a child. And the trolls that used to stalk me here found me on my comic book channel. Now, for the first year, I was well loved there. I was getting subscribers faster than any other comic book channel. While some channels had 100 subscribers and it took them 3 years, I had my first 100 subscribers in my first 3 weeks of my channel. I was growing like no other channel because they appreciated what I was doing. I was having a great time with it. But then one day, one of my trolls found me. And they started, quote-unquote, exposing the fact that I had my other channel. The reason I never mentioned it is it had nothing to do with comic books, so why even bring it up? And I wasn't trying to self-promote my other channel because I just don't do those things and didn't need to. And then what happened was they got to the point where people who I thought were my friends would troll my accounts, would make accusations about me which were 100% false, would lie and pretend to be my friend and stab me in the back, and do all these things to the point where I shut down the channel. Well, how many of you are glad I'm here right now? And with all the videos I've done almost on a daily basis. And it just shows the stupidity and the lack of intelligence of the common typical hater slash troll, that if they didn't want me to spread truth, so they succeeded in that to the point where I gave it up and went to comic books. And if they did not intervene with all the things that they did, I'd still be there to this day. I would have probably made 5 videos in the past 2 years on this channel instead of over 5 a week. So if you appreciate the fact that I'm here, thank those trolls for the hatred that they caused me, because it motivated me. Because then I was like, you know what? You got rid of my comic book channel. Now I'm going to come back here and do even more work. So I can use the negativity as motivation, especially when I got that death threat. If you would have read, I wish to this day I would have saved that email. I remember reading that email. It literally, for a week and a half, I was scared to death. I was walking around with weapons just in case. I really thought, because whoever wrote this email took about a half hour of their time to write what they wrote. And they were saying that there was a contract out on my life, and if I didn't pay them $8,000, there was nothing they could do about it, and I would be dead. And there was a contract. There was a hit out for my life. And yet, that was almost a year ago. So either the hit is taking a back burner, the person's very slow at what their job is, or it was full of crap. But just imagine if I would have listened to it and shut down my channel, because it said, oh, don't even turn this over to the cops. And I stood my ground, because nobody is going to control my life. And the same with yours. Nobody should control your life. And if you are tired of what's going on and you do nothing, like this says the picture image that you're seeing, to ignore evil is to become an accomplice to it. If you are ignoring all the things that are pissing you off right now, then you're allowing it to happen. And that's why I've even told people, when it comes to the Constitution, at least the new Constitution that they created after the Act of 1871, the only reason it exists is people do not contest it. Silence is the same as agreeing. And I've talked about this so much, and that's why I do not consent to their corruption. And neither should you. And you should not be afraid to mention it, no matter how many people you hate. Because all the people, the hundreds of people that used to make fun of me back when I first started, is down to a few select people that are still angry and still the same person they were years ago. Even the one that I wanted to fight back in 2012, that person hasn't changed since then. That was 4 years ago. I'm a much different person. Doesn't make me better. It just means that when you go up a flight of stairs, you have to take one step at a time. They're still on the bottom rung, looking up. And I'm getting further and further away. And that's why I don't get many people these days making videos saying I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist. Why? Because all the things that I've been saying for all these years and I've been consistent with have been slowly and surely coming true. Do you think that's just luck? You think that's just coincidence? Or you think maybe I did spend years of trying to research things and see what was important, and I didn't choose to be silent? Because trust me, if I would have stayed on the comic book channel and none of those trolls would have ever hurt me, and they would have left me alone, I would have stayed there, I'd probably make a lot of money, I'd have a lot more comic books, I'd have a lot more friends, I'd get a lot more views, I'd probably get a lot more AdSense, but I wouldn't contribute anything to society. So I'm very glad that they were that stupid and not think about what they were doing. They thought I was just going to give up completely. And it's okay to give up sometimes, but you notice I'm still here. Sometimes you're just going to have those days you just want to throw up your hands in the air and say, oh, you know what, I'm done. I want to end it all. I just don't want to be here. It's not worth it. We all have those days. It's okay. It's just another part of emotion. People are so afraid to be sad or upset or angry or frustrated or lonely, but they never stop and think, why is it okay just to be happy? No one ever stops and thinks, well, why am I so happy? They just are. Well, if you're sad or depressed or angry, you just are. You get over it and you move on once you get past it. Like they say, this too shall pass. So if I've done anything, I've tried to motivate people to become individuals. Stop depending on others to deal with your life and your family's life and your future. And that's what you're saying every time you go to register a vote for any candidate anywhere in the world, is you're saying, here, I can't do it myself. Please regulate my life for me. I want freedom. And think how stupidly ironic that is and how sad of a sentence this is. I want freedom, so please tell me how I can be free. That's what you do when you want a leader to lead you, is you're saying, I want to be free, so please tell me how to be free. If you're truly free, I'll give you an example. Does a bird need to ask permission where to fly? Does a bird have to ask where to land? It just does, because that's what true freedom is. A bird can be wherever it is and decide, you know what, I feel like going up. No regulations, no license, no direction, no limitations, it just flies. And we, especially in this country, supposedly take our pride out of how free we are. And yet we need permission to drive and to fly. We need licenses to do things. We need permission. We can get thrown in jail if we do something that somebody up there doesn't like. Where is the freedom? And you hear this all the time in politics, especially in this country. And the reason I talk about this country so much, the United States of America Corporation, is that's where I live. But they pride themselves with our freedom. Take all your possessions, go to the border, and leave, and watch how free you're not. We have more freedom. That's like saying, okay, look at that tiger in that public zoo. It's got a small cage. Okay, now look at that tiger in the free range zoo. They got a lot more range, but they're still caged. So just because we have a bigger cage does not necessarily make us free. We are freer, but we are not free. So the term should be land of the freer, home of the sometimes brave. Because it's definitely not the land of the free. Because last I checked, you don't need a license to walk from one end of the room to the other, do you? But you need a license to travel in a vehicle. Why? So they can tax you, they can regulate it, they can control it, they can stop you, they can arrest you, they can ticket you, they can fine you. That's your freedom. This is the freedoms we supposedly want. How dare anybody say we're free? If you cannot go out of your house and do whatever you want, and that even means evil, but if you do evil, there are consequences for it. If you take the life of somebody else, you should be punished for it. But I don't think anybody else has the right to take your life. Because then how are you any better? You're doing it in the name of justice? In the name of God? Unless God came down from the heavens above and said, okay, it's your job, I decree that your job is to take the life of anybody that takes the life of somebody else's, until then, you have no right to be taking somebody else's life. Two wrongs do not make a right. But we can always justify things based on emotion. People need to start thinking in a different way. We are about to exit an old system, and that old system needs to collapse. And many people will collapse with it because they're in denial, basically. So we've been given a great gift that, from as far as I know, has not been available in any time in history, and that is the internet, the World Wide Web. We have the ability to speak to people that we will never meet in our lifetime. And we're not taking advantage of this enough. How difficult is it to make a video? You see, like, people ask me all the time, if you watch my early beginning videos for years, I would show my face on camera and I would do my videos. You know why I do it this way? It's just easier. Because now I could just put on the camera and start speaking. I don't have to take my camera, record it, upload it, process it, lower it down, upload it again, and go do all these editings. No, that takes forever. It takes the fun out of it. Now I could just hit play and start speaking. Doing the live show is the best way to go. I don't have to show myself. Not that I'm afraid to. It's easier this way. Right now, I'm in my bathrobe. I don't need to be all wearing a suit and tie. People are so worried about the images. And I've had people, like, the first time they come to my channel, it's like, oh, I was expecting a video and all I got is this person talking. Well, to me, the substance is more important than the little pretty special effects. It's like watching the new Star Wars film. Yeah, it's prettier to look at, but it's the same thing as A New Hope. So you spent money on a nicer version of The New Hope with a few different characters. Not for nothing, I've been a huge Star Wars fan since the day I saw the opening Star Wars movie in 1977. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. The newest Star Wars movie was just Luke being replaced by Rey, the Death Star being replaced by a big planet that does the same thing, the stormtroopers are the same, the whole plot is basically the same, just a nicer version of it, because the spaceships did look a lot better. Okay, is that what we want in this world? And people are so worried about videos that have all the special effects and all the proper editing, and oh, it's got to look pretty, it's got to be the fireworks show, and they stop focusing on the message. So if you have a computer that can record your voice, you have enough to have your voice heard throughout the world. If you hate what's going on, why are you not doing everything in your power to try and stop it, or at the very least, change it? Because if you're not contributing anything, you're part of the problem. Like they say, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. So I hope this motivates one person out there. Because if that one person decides to make a change and say, you know what, it is my time to put in some sacrifice. It is my time to have my voice being heard. It is my time to give up on the fear. It is my time to stop letting other people do the work that I should be doing. If that one person does that, how many lives could that person change? And that's why I don't give up, and that's why I will not give up. You could hate me, you could disagree with my content and the way I do it, you can have opinions of what I should do to make things better or whatever, but I am me. I do things the way I want. You either resonate with it or you don't. But please don't tell me how to work my life and what to do, just like I shouldn't tell you. You don't have to do what I'm saying. And you're not going to be not welcome here because if you decide not to. What I'm saying is if we are going to just sit there and ignore evil, then evil will win. And we can't do that anymore. We got to stop being afraid to listen to both sides of an equation so you can formulate a good picture and a good opinion. You can always take good things out of something. And that's up to you. So I want to thank everybody that took the time to comment. At this time, I'm pretty much no longer going to respond to the comments because on the last video, I mean, I'm sure the intent wasn't that, but then again, I don't know the intent of anybody other than myself, but it makes me go off track. So don't think you're being ignored. I just want to make sure my topic stays on track and we don't get into little transgressions like happened the other night. So don't take that as an insult. Don't think of it as you're not welcome to comment. You guys can interact yourselves. But at this point, like comments and everything, it's going to be very rare I comment. It's a lot of things, and it's also, it gets very draining emotionally when I see people constantly saying, "Oh, I got to do something better," or "I got to do it differently," or "I missed this or that." I appreciate what you have to say, but just accept the fact that I want to make sure I stay on track. And I'm sure some of you will understand. Some of you will unsubscribe for that. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. But I will definitely never be like somebody like Alex Jones, who gets paid lots of money and has plenty of advertisers out there, gives you a pretty little background, and has all these perfect cameras that can go all around the world and spew a lot of bullshit fear porn. I'm going to be as real as I can. I'm going to be as honest as I can, which means there are going to be times you're not going to like what I have to say. You're not going to like the way I say it. You may not think it's relevant, but it's my channel. Just like in my house, I do what I want. Nobody tells me how to run my house. Nobody tells me how to run my business. But I will always appreciate hearing what somebody has to say, because if somebody says something that I could take from and improve because it resonated with me, then that's a good thing. So never be afraid to give your opinion. Just learn a different way. Learn a civil way. Because all we're going to do is continue to fight and hate like what's going on now. They are driving that message home big time. I've never seen it like this before. To the point where even news channels are talking about possible civil war. And I made videos, and if you've been following me for a while, know that earlier this summer, I was telling people that's one hell of an distraction technique to keep you away from the monetary system and what they're about to do. That they would want people fighting amongst themselves. So I've been warning people. But then again, I've been warning people of a lot of things since these days, and I was ignored. Because I'm just a regular guy with a few hundred subscribers that care. So I guess it must mean that my message is not valid, because I'm not with a suit and tie and a college degree with a fancy camera with a bunch of special effects. That's what most people want. They want to be entertained. You're at the wrong channel if that's the case. So, as usual, I want to thank you all for participating, whether you're watching, whether you're taking the time to comment either live or when this video uploads. If you care enough to wish to share this, I really appreciate it. Any questions that you have, I might do a video one of these days where I might do a question and answer, so that might be coming along soon. And so if you have any questions, write them down, because if I ever do that, I'll do a live channel video specifically on that. You can ask your questions, and then I'll do an answer video the next time, or if I can answer it right away, I will, because I want to make sure it's not scripted. So as a matter of fact, what I might do is when I do make a video saying question and answer, the live questions I'll answer live. So this way you could see that I don't write things down. I don't have to go research it. I'll either try and answer the question if I can, or say it's something I just don't understand or don't know. So we're going to keep it real. And that's what we need more in government, and especially in our media. Stop buying the New York Times. Stop buying the Washington Post. Stop watching CNN and MSNBC and all these corrupt stations. Go on their social networks and tell them we're tired of the fraud. We're tired of their bullshit lies. Let them know. Because if there is a civil war, I guarantee you it won't only be the politicians that get attacked if it comes to that point. Many of the media will be subject to the same things that these corrupt governments will experience. Maybe they need to be reminded of that. Now, I'm not promoting violence. I don't think anybody should do that, and I think it's disgusting if you do. But there are plenty of bad apples out there that are ready, willing, and waiting to spoil this tree. Let's save the tree before it dies. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day, and don't forget to have your trolls spayed or neutered.